Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank. He's Aaron William Freeland, and we're here to talk everything Maple Leaf, whether it be national teams, individuals that represent and wear our flag proudly, or whether they're teams that play within the confines of the upper 49th parallel. I guess I just excluded part of Ontario, didn't I?
It's fine. Toronto's always been its own entity.
But regardless, that's what we're doing here. And and that includes Ontario. The good, the bad, and it appears the Leafs are the only team without an expiring contract. What does that mean, Aaron?
Well, it's a rather unique position for the Leafs to be in, especially considering that no other team in the NHL is in the same situation. Um, basically, what it means is John Chayka is off to a banging start, and we have nobody coming off the books for another 2 years. And now, the good news is the players or staff members won't necessarily be distracted by negotiations or contract disputes, which allows the team to focus on hockey and results. On the flip side, some of these guys that they brought in, if they want to walk away from them because they don't work out, they're kind of tied with that. Four of the six players that Shaka brought in through free agency were linked to 2 year contracts. That's Roslovic, Sissons, Teddy Bluger, and Zach McEwen. They're all under contract through 2027, 2028. So if one of those players doesn't fit with the roster or Jim Hiller's play style or just underperforms, the simplest solution is unavailable, which would be to let that player go when the deal expires. Instead, if one of those guys happens to struggle in their first year with the team and they can't really find a groove, they're stuck with him until they can find a trade partner. It's not an end of the world sort of situation, but it certainly does tie their hands a little bit. And again, it's not the end of the world here because Easton Cowan and Gavin McKenna won't be occupied by contract negotiations for the next couple of years. Cowan has 2 more years left on his entry-level deal, while McKenna will begin his entry-level deal this season as he inches closer to his NHL debut. So it's not the end of the world. It's not the greatest situation to find yourself in, but it's certainly not untenable. Like in some situations, the Maple Leafs have found them in recent years with just too many players and too many high-priced contracts.
I don't think it's a coincidence. And the reason I say that is because Austin Matthews' contract expires in that 2 year period.
Yeah.
This is a commitment to, I believe, it's a commitment by the team to Austin Matthews saying, look, here are the guys we're bringing in. They're going to have a 2 year contract. You're going to get to play with them now, and we're going to have continuity the following year. Um, at, at every, at every, with every team in every league, in every sport, continuity means something. Teams that change direction every year don't go anywhere. The teams that win championships are the teams that arrive at a conclusion of what a plan looks like and follow it through without diverging from the path that they designed. Right. So, am I saying the Leafs are going to win a cup? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that they've decided to have some sort of continuity. They are rolling the dice on this group of guys because of what you said, because there's nobody leaving. So the cap space is the cap space. Now there's going to be some changes, but those changes may require raises for what they hope is, and this is, as a fan, we should all of sports be hopeful that players are successful on the team we're rooting for. And yes, that creates a predicament, and that is the cap. And that the predicament is that you end up having to pay these guys a little more money because they played really well. Now, the elevating of the cap space will afford the Leafs, if the players they've signed prove to be better than what they're earning right now, type of situation. So, yeah, we'll see how this goes, Aaron. At the end of the day, good news is bad news, bad news is good news. But it all comes down to, what do they look like at Christmas? Because that's really what the question is and will always be to Leaf fans. How do they look rolling into next year when the race for the cup really begins? And that is a playoff spot in hand or not. And the one thing the Leafs don't want to be is they don't want to be again in a position where they're selling off. They want to be in a position where that Bruin first round draft pick is as pitiful as it can possibly be for multiple reasons, because the team doesn't want to deserve or earn that kind of pick. They want to be one of the other teams that picks in the top, in the bottom 16, the bottom 20, whatever, right? That's what they want to be. So we'll see if that works out for them.
And that's a common consensus, right? The worse your pick is, the better you've done in the previous year, which is a bellwether when it comes to progress. So.
Aaron, tell me about Patrick O'Sullivan. He is now the guy that is going to run NHL development for the Maple Leafs. So that means the buck stops at his desk on the players being prepared, ready to assist in bringing the Maple Leaf team up to snuff.
Yeah, so he's been elevated to director of NHL development, and that was announced on Sunday. Of course, they couldn't do it on a Friday, so we could get it on the show, but that's neither here nor there. This is his previous role with the club was as a development coach, a role that he's held with the organization since the 23-24 season. Over those 3 years, he's worked with a player development group that includes Nick Ampetrabov, Kyle Clifford, Denver Manderson, and Jake Muzzin, which is focusing on technical skill refinement, video analysis, and individual biomechanics across the roster. So now he's going to be taking over the head of that. He was originally selected 56th overall by the Minnesota Wild back in 2003, set franchise records with the Mississauga Ice Dogs, won OHL and CHL Rookie of the Year honors, scored the game-winning goal for Team USA at the 2004 World Juniors, and captured AHL Rookie of the Year after a 47-goal, 93-point season with the Houston Aeros. He also played 334 NHL games with the Kings, Oilers, Canes, Wild, and Coyotes before transitioning into broadcasting and later player development. I think a lot of people will be familiar with his work based on what he's done with John Tavares. Now, the relationship that O'Sullivan has with John actually goes back more than 2 decades. As a teenager, Tavares cited O'Sullivan's puck handling, vision, and shot mechanics as an early influence while watching him play with the Ice Dogs. They later connected through youth lacrosse and off-season training sessions. He also got him to work with Leafs skating consultant Paul Matheson to address linear power and edge control. So it's one of those things where there is a much deeper relationship here with one of the cornerstones of the team, John. So at the end of the day, this can only mean good things, provided the players are willing to listen to him and willing to listen to their coaches. It's a big provided. But for a franchise focused on both performance and sustainability, this move formalizes the contributions that O'Sullivan has already made to the franchise.
So here's what Aaron said, and I'm going to put my spin on it. This is a guy who has successfully shown and worked with John Tavares, one of the best players in hockey in his time as a hockey player. A guy who didn't and doesn't have all the attributes that you associate with a superstar, fleet of foot, that kind of stuff. John Tavares's greatness is all based on a commitment to hard work and a regimen. What does that mean? That means that he's a guy that's getting the most out of his body and his abilities. And that's what Patrick O'Sullivan's job is by definition. Every player that comes to the Maple Leafs, his job is to make them the best player they can be, not necessarily emotionally. That'll be a different person, but mechanically, it's going to be his responsibility to give the players the mechanics required to be a good professional hockey player. And that means it's layered. In other words, even if you're not fleet as foot as Tavares is, there's a part of the game that you can use to cover that up. There's a speed even when you're not fast, and it's about intelligence and about understanding the game, and that's what John Tavares does. Anybody out there who thinks they could predict how many goals John Tavares has scored the past couple of years, based on his age, based on the fact that people all assumed he was going to lose a step. And guess what? He has lost a step. But somehow, even having lost that step, there's something in his game that salvages a great career. And that's the job of O'Sullivan. O'Sullivan's got to get the best out of each player, working on their strengths and minimizing their weaknesses. Because anybody who doesn't understand how hard Tavares works doesn't know the Play-Doh that he's starting with. He's a great athlete, but more than that, he is a consummate professional. And that's what O'Sullivan's job is, to make all the players as professional as he can. And he has a poster boy for it. So that's kind of helpful too, right? Right, Aaron?
100%. 100%.
So now let's talk about Patrick Laine. So here's a guy that we may all remember or not. When Austin Matthews was drafted, there was a question at the draft: who do you get, Matthews or Laine? And after they were drafted, there was this battle you may or may not remember out there, but I'm here to tell you. There was the question of which one's really the best player, the guy in Winnipeg or the guy in Toronto. And we know that Laine somehow fell short, and he has had some bad luck with injuries, of course. But I think the biggest thing he's had bad luck with is consistency and his inability to continue being a superstar throughout the season, as opposed to in parts, which is why he's available today, Aaron, right?
Exactly. And again, it's and I think this is where O'Sullivan can come into play as well, because of his history with helping players maintain and improve themselves and continue to develop. Tavares hasn't exactly been injury free over the course of his career. And I'd like to think over the course of the past 3 or 4 years that O'Sullivan has also had a part in making sure that, John stays where he needs to be. The same can be applied to Laine. There are some holes in his game that could stand to use a little patching, and I think O'Sullivan might be the guy to do that. But you have to take into consideration as well whether or not he's going to be able to regain his previous form, if he's got the confidence for that, and how they're going to be able to fit his contract in. So
I agree with you, and I think that to O'Sullivan's point, and this team and the way they wanted to move, the way the big boss of MLSE said, analytics is going to be the key. This is a case of analytics being important, but the visual experience of watching a player and seeing what they do, the numbers don't lie. I get that. The trends don't lie. What a player does can show up statistically, but there's also the part that I think O'Sullivan's key thing is that it's what he sees in the player as well. So it's about looking at the player, using the stats that they have in their hand, but looking at him and seeing if there's anything that they can see that identifies an issue that needs to change. Like with hitters, they talk about the back foot, they talk about bat height, all this stuff. It's easier with baseball because it's so statistically obvious, right? And people can learn from that. So at the end of the day, there has to be an identification of why he's not scoring as much as he used to. Is it his feet? Is it his arms? Is it his wrists? What is it? So that's O'Sullivan's job. And if the Leafs think that he has the makings of being a 30, 40 goal scorer again, without being a handicap defensively, it'd be silly for them not to get him. Now, the question is, how much money do they have to give him? How desperate is he to be a Maple Leaf? How desperate is he to be another team? And how much are teams willing to, how far up the scale of pay do they want to go? Is this an $895,000 a year guy? I don't think so. I think they're going to have to go up the scale a little bit. But then the question becomes, what does this guy want this year? Does he want to do something to prove he's got value? Is he willing to sacrifice this season and the Leafs take advantage of that if they can get him, or any other team? Then he becomes a bargain. He becomes a bargain because there's upside as opposed to downside. Like, you pay this guy $4 or $5 million to get 15 goals and be a disadvantage defensively, then that's bad money, and no team wants to spend bad money.
No, that's obviously never the goal. Occasionally, sometimes it does happen, but that's obviously never been any team's goal.
Yeah, a great score. Looked good with Montreal when he came back from that injury. Remember in the exhibition season, he got hurt by a Leaf defenseman, broke his ankle, came back. He looked really good, but then he slipped into that not so good out of the lineup guy that he became with Montreal. Let's go over to what we call our second period. And leading off the second period is That's a good way to describe this team. Leading off this period is the Jays. And they almost swept the Phillies, but they didn't quite do it. And the reason they didn't do it is this damn guy that hits a ton of home runs, who hadn't hit a home runs in like 30 days or something. And guess when he decides to hit a home run, not only one, but he hits two.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable timing. Schwarber looked absolutely human in the home run derby. I'm sorry, Philly fans, but it is what it is. Derek Hill singled with the bases loaded in the 12th. Jesus Luzardo struck out 12 in 7 innings. I mean, Andres Jimenez had a 2-run single in Toronto's 3-run 8th inning that tied the game at 5, certainly pulling off the heroics. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough. Now, I take comfort in the fact that the Jays have won 4 out of their last 5 series, not including that 1-game stopover in Chicago, which didn't exactly go as planned. Certainly there's a sign that they're doing at least marginally okay at this point. They're playing better than 500 ball. They start a 7-game homestand tonight against Boston. Jameson Talon is going to be facing Sonny Gray. Philly is going to be playing a 3-game series at St. Louis on Monday, and it's going to be Painter versus Hunter Dobbins, so that should be interesting to see.
Very interesting. So what's this about the Jays signing an Orioles star? This is a prediction, not tampering, just a prediction.
No, just a prediction. Kerry Miller of the Bleacher Report is predicting that they're going to need additional help. I know that the Jays added Jose Soriano at the deadline, but even with his addition, more help in the rotation couldn't hurt. And that's where they're actually predicted to sign Baltimore Orioles left-handed starter Trevor Rogers to a 4-year, $114 million contract. It's very intriguing for a few reasons. Toronto does have Dylan Cease, Trey Savage, and Jose Soriano as staples.
And they have a Rogers
rotation. And they do. However, this Rogers, Trevor, isn't Tyler Rogers' brother.
Nope.
That is Taylor Rogers. So it's a different guy. Same last name. They've been confused before. But, they've also got Cody Ponce, Jose Barrios, and Spencer Arrighetti under club control through 2027. Rogers has a 4.2 ERA with a 7-7 record for the Orioles, but last year he had a 1.81 ERA and posted a 5.3 BWAR for an incredible season. That would be a great addition for the Blue Jays rotation. But the inconsistencies are a reason to worry. The risk might be worth taking, as his ceiling as a dominant left-hander would be a great complement to their right-heavy rotation. So it'll be interesting to see if they take a flyer on that. I mean, it's almost $30 million a year, which is what they're paying Cease to be their ace. But like how Cease has broken out with Toronto, maybe Rogers could find his groove here. And that's certainly the hope if they do proceed with it.
Kawhi Leonard faces another issue, this one with L.A.
Yeah, Uncle Dennis hasn't been doing this guy any favors. There was a wish list that he had. Basically, Uncle Dennis asked team officials for part ownership of the Los Angeles Lakers. A private plane would be available at all times, a house, and last but certainly not least, a guaranteed amount of off-court endorsement money that they could expect if Leonard plays for their team. All of those items were to be clear, would fall outside the confines of the league's current collective bargaining agreement. This is just more fuel to the fire here as to what's actually going to happen. Not even sure now if the trade is going to happen, but the damage that all of this and how long the initial investigation has dragged on for is certainly not helping Kawhi Leonard's legacy in the NBA, that's for sure.
Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. This is not just an isolated case. It's becoming a pattern, and one that the league is not, the league has to, it gets to the point, Aaron, where if this kind of stuff's going on repeatedly and all these stories pan out to being real and real problems, they're going to have to slap his wrists at the very least. And by slap his wrists, I mean, make him pay, make him pay financially and maybe even suspend him for a year. I mean, this is ridiculous. At some point, somebody knows they're violating the rules. Somebody who does it once, you go, okay, dummy, what a guy, stupid agent didn't know what was going on. But when it seems that he's doing this consistently year after year, looking for a way to circumvent the cap, it's not a good look. And I don't understand why the Jays, why the Raptors just don't all of a sudden just go, you know what? Let's back out of this. This isn't what we traded for. This isn't the situation. We feel we made a trade for an asset, and this asset is not only diminishing, but it could disappear with all this stuff continuing, right?
Oh, 100%. And let's be clear here. His playing ability has never really been in question. The thing that's come into question is everything else that goes on outside of that, which is what's most damaging.
Yeah, he's the reason they invented this thing where you sit out, for health reasons, just to maintain yourself. Has those maintenance days that he doesn't play, and they're not because he's injured, but because you know what, he can only play 4 out of 5 days. That kind of stuff. It's because of him that stuff was invented. Whole term was invented. Let's go to MLS and let's talk about Commissioner Larry Berg. What's up with him?
So there's a new guy. That would be Larry Berg. He was introduced as Major League Soccer's second commissioner. This is the former Los Angeles Football Club lead owner. He said that at this point here, his responsibility is to work with the clubs, owners, and everyone across the league to build on a foundation to help MLS reach its full potential. The initial commissioner, Don Garber, helped build MLS from a fledgling operation fighting to stay afloat and relevant to a 30-team behemoth. From here, Berg says they want to invest greatly to expand that. He wants to expand the salary cap from $6.4 million to be in the $12 to $21 million range. Now, owners are obviously in agreement with him because they're saying that the current system is too restrictive. But his number one job, he says, is enhancing the roster investment model so teams can have more freedom that can construct teams that work best for their markets. Basically, what this means is your ticket prices are probably going to go up. Well, at the same time, for the first couple of years, the quality of play is going to go down as teams struggle to attract other top flight talent from other leagues who are used to being paid more. It's going to be an interesting season for sure once it starts. Status quo, said Berg, is not an option. They've got an extraordinary foundation, except from the clubs, terrific fans, and tremendous momentum. Now it's time to pull the right levers, make the right decisions, and build on everything that's been created so far. So we'll have to see how all of that goes.
Absolutely, totally true. And when it comes to MLS, we've seen from the TFC perspective, where if you bring in a couple of high-priced players and you're only limited to one or two, if they don't pan out, that affects your team very adversely, and we've seen that firsthand here in Toronto.
It's a heck of a problem to have. I got to be honest with you.
Absolutely. Well, Fernandez, greatest Canadian female player, doesn't make it past the 4th round.
Yeah, it was a little bit upsetting. She dropped a 6-4, 6-4 decision to Naomi Osaka. Switzerland's Belinda Bencic followed with a 6-4, 6-0 win over Alexandra Ayala to end the run to the breakout star from the Philippines. Fernandez was seeded 30th. She broke at 3-3 in both sets, with Osaka, the number 11 seed, closing out the match with her 6th ace to complete the win in an hour and 22 minutes. Now, Fernandez upset 5th-seeded Mira Andreeva of Russia to reach the round of 16 in the first place. But unfortunately, it was small decisions that were made over the course of the match that just mounted up over and over and over again to a string of errors. 7 other Canadian players, including Bianca Andreescu, were given wildcard entries, but all were eliminated in the first or second rounds. Gabriela Dabrowski, the world number 3 player with a substitute partner as her usual partner, Luisa Stefani of Brazil, had an elbow injury, was done. It's difficult at this point here because it just feels like hometown fans are getting chinched a little bit when it comes to this sort of thing. But there is no doubt in my mind that whoever wins this will have deserved it.
Absolutely. Let's go to the Canadian Football League. Horvath scores twice as the Lions defeat the Ticats.
Xander Horvath had 2 touchdowns, and Sean White converted a field goal with 30 seconds left on the clock. to lift the BC Lions past the Hamilton Ticats 27-24 on Saturday. Nathan Rourke returned to the field for the Leos after 3-game injury absence to make it back-to-back wins, as BC is trying to climb the Western Division standings. Rourke orchestrated a really fantastic-looking 11-play, 16-yard drive to set up White's kick, delivering the football to Justin McInnes and Javon Cottoy, for the key first down pickups. White did the rest from 24 yards out, and that was pretty much all she wrote. A bit of a deflating loss for Hamilton, especially to lose it so close to the end. But there are signs of life.
They're halfway through their season. They're 3-6, and the Argos are 4-4. That's not good news for them because there are teams in the West that are doing real well. Alexander and Philpott, the other Eastern team, did a number on the Elks.
Yeah, Philpott actually found himself in the end zone 3 times for a touch for a hat trick of touchdowns, basically, as the Owls put a curb stomping on the Edmonton Elks 48-30 at Percival Molson Stadium, and they extended their win streak to 6 games. One of those things where he couldn't seem to do anything wrong. He had 10 passes for 131 yards. Davis Alexander had his 8th 300-yard performance in 9 games, finishing with 352. 4 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, and an interception on 22 out of 28 passing. Cody Fajardo got the Elks on the board early in the second quarter with a dive from the 1, becoming the 9th player in CFL history to throw for 100 touchdowns and rush for 50. All is not lost. There is some hope here. But yeah, the way that things are going here, it's been an interesting season, mainly because Toronto at 4-4 has spent a lot of time on the road. Montreal has been absolutely dominant at 8-1 so far this season, well ahead of Saskatchewan. Interesting way everything's played out so far.
The Argos are in a good situation with Hamilton playing so poorly. They can concentrate on the process and concentrate on what it'll take to be a really good team come playoff time. Because if Hamilton doesn't put up a better fight, no other team can take over a playoff spot from the Argos. Only Hamilton and Ottawa can. And both those teams could lose a playoff spot to a Western team. So the Argos are in an excellent position in as far as they can concentrate on what they need to do. And there's a lot to be done, and their quarterback needs to get into midseason form. Like, as much as he's had a lot of yards, he's churned a lot of yards, he's made a lot of mistakes, which I think have to do with a year and a half away from the game, in my opinion. With him spending some time now, we'll see how he can straighten out his game.
Yeah, there does seem to be a lot of ring rust there. So, it's one of those things where more reps will help. Speaking of teams not doing so well, the Ottawa Red Blacks dropped a game 42-20 to the Rough Riders. The Red Blacks, after changing their coaching staff and a whole bunch of other things, are now 0-8 to start the season. It's not a position they want to be in. How much runway does their current coach get?
First season as coach and GM. Let's go to the NHL, and let's rank Canada's 7 NHL teams, Aaron. Why don't we?
Sure. So we'll start off with number 7, the Vancouver Canucks. This is obviously as expected. They've been fire sailing the past couple of years. They're not projected to be all that good this year. There's also still talk that pieces might be sold off before the year begins. A new GM, new front office hires, new coaching staff, and a different roster means fairly lean times for them. At number 6, we've got the Flames. Much like the Canucks, the Flames might surprise people if they're in the playoff mix. They've got some good young pieces coming up, but Craig Conroy has moved most of his top guys. They're further along in the rebuild, but they're definitely not going to win much. Winnipeg has stronger pieces than either Vancouver or Calgary, but what was once a team that felt like it was onto something feels like the opposite. The offseason buzz around them isn't the same level as other Canadian teams, and the fact that Connor Hellebuck is looking for outs means there's still a huge question mark there. The Ottawa Senators are ranked at number 4. The question is, will they be better with Brady Tkachuk is gone, or worse because Brady Tkachuk is gone? On paper, the loss of Tkachuk certainly stings, but the noise that we've heard coming out of the locker room seems to be addition by subtraction on this one. Now, the Senators didn't really get anything that would help them this season in trade, but Steve Staios has insisted the team isn't taking a step back, and they did reinvest a little bit by getting Eklund and Burakovsky to help fill the offensive void. Number 3 is the Toronto Maple Leafs. They took a bit of a
a little high.
Again, it's not my list. And any complaints about this?
I'm just telling you my opinion. I think that's a little high. I think 5th would be a good move for them. But go ahead.
All complaints should be addressed to Jim Parsons at the Hockey News. He's the one that compiled this one. But yeah, ranked at 3, the Leafs have been very busy, obviously, as most of our followers know, including adding Bobo and a whole bunch of other players. Don't be fooled into thinking that all these changes are going to necessarily make them a playoff team, though. Montreal could certainly be the top Canadian team this summer. They've done almost everything right, and their run in 25-26 has them pegged as a team of the future. Lane Hudson is already one of the league's best defensemen. Nick Suzuki won the Selke while hitting 100 points. Cole Caulfield got himself 50 goals, and Juraj Slafkovsky continues to develop into a power forward. Ivan Demidov is going to be a star, and their blue line and goaltending aren't glaring weaknesses like they were in the past. Whether or not Coach St. Louis can get them over the hump remains to be seen. And the number 1 team out of the Canadian team still appears to be the Edmonton Oilers. Now, they did regress a little bit in 25-26, but no Canadian team is currently closer to the mountaintop than the Oilers. They still have Draisaitl and McDavid. The big question mark going into the season is not who's on the ice, but who's behind the bench. And that's going to be Mike Babcock as the new head coach. It could be a massive success, but it could also be a disaster. And like a lot of people are going to be watching to see if they can actually prove that they're doing it right. So,
boy, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting season because a couple of years ago, Canadian teams were peeking into the playoffs, looking really good, and being on the verge. They seem to all be on a curve of getting better, right? This year, there's concern that there could be steps back, or they're entering into what you called this best set, the order that their power rankings for Canadian teams. They could really hopscotch all over the list, all over the list. The only team I think that has any consistency to lean on, that's the Montreal Canadiens. Now, that's not to suggest that they're the best team. I'm not going to argue about whether Edmonton is or isn't, but you can't bet against a team with Draisaitl and David. You can't do that.
No.
Hudson makes big jump to the NHL's top 20 D-men right now rankings. That's not a surprise.
No, he's made steady market improvement over the course of his career so far. He's landed now in 19th place in the NHL Network's top 20 defensemen right now rankings. After having an even better sophomore season, he jumped 13 spots to land on 6th place in the same rankings this season. That's the biggest jump in the rankings for him. One of the big aspects of his game that progressed last season was his shot. He scored 12 goals in his second season after scoring just 6 in his first year. The fact that he's been getting a lot of setup time from Ivan Demidov and getting plenty of advice from Adam Nicholas is what really helps. That, coupled with his work ethic, has fired him up the list like a rocket. So it's great to see.
25 years ago, the Ottawa Senators traded Alexis Yashin, and guess what? The remnants of that trade still exist.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how far this has actually gone. It's a little bit long to go through, but at this point, I'm just going to sum it up nice and quick. Alexei Yashin was traded for a 2001 number 2 pick, which turns into Jason Spezza. Jason Spezza was traded for Nick Paul. Nick Paul was traded for a 2024 4th-round pick, which turned into Blake Montgomery, who is still in the league. So that 25-year trade tree is still alive. Wonder of wonders.
Let's go Jets.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if they're competitive without Connor. He's been one of the league's best goaltenders for quite some time now. If Cheveldayoff does decide to trade Hellebuck, Winnipeg is likely downgrading in the crease at the very least. However, there's been no real movement. It just seems like the demands aren't fulfillable for the teams that would be interested in picking them up. The price is just too steep.
Let's talk a little more about the Oilers.
So according to their GM, Bowman made some hints about timing and opportunity. The Oilers finally have cap flexibility. Bowman was asked if this offseason is different than others because the team has cap space. He said, well, sure. And it's my first 2 seasons running the Oilers. They were defined by a lack of ability to get things done because I was handcuffed. They'd often operated out of LTI just to stay cap compliant a lot of the time. So is what Bowman was saying. But he's also saying, you're not necessarily hoarding space. They're just kind of biding their time. Holding cap space is Edmonton positioning itself to finally be a buyer at the secondhand market, not just at the trade deadline, but at any point a good player becomes cheaply available. Line A has been linked with them. Tarasenko has been linked with them. But he's thinking of a bigger swing or a more impactful ad as opposed to those names as the teams make changes and players become available throughout the season. It's just not going to be right away.
Yeah, instead of players that you're hoping return to greatness, one that is actually great right now and will continue it in an Oilers uniform, which is the key. Let's talk about the last Canadian team, the Canucks.
So there's a few Vancouver minor hockey organizations that might be experiencing some pains. In particular, the Vancouver Angels, a girls hockey association. They recently put out a joint statement showing concern for a proposed action by the NHL's Vancouver Canucks that they say is going to reduce access to ice for minor hockey associations in the area. The issue stems from a proposed plan from the Canucks to finally build a practice facility that would also remove a community rink at the Britannia Community Center from use. Between the Vancouver Angels, Vancouver Thunderbirds, and Vancouver Minor Hockey Association, there's about 2,000 minor hockey players that could potentially be affected by taking that rink out of service. And again, Vancouver hasn't added any new ice rinks basically since the 1970s, while demand remains high. That's 55 plus years here. So any loss of anything for Vancouver to get a new practice facility for themselves is to the detriment of growing hockey out there.
Absolutely. Aaron, this was fun. Thanks for doing this.
Appreciate it, Frank.
He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Sneeshy. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time. Have a great week, everybody.